Hi, and welcome everyone to our very first Way of Nature, Nature Side Chat. In this monthly series of talks and discussion, John Milton, who is a pioneering environmentalist ecologist and a world-renowned spiritual leader, will speak to many of his friends and colleagues about the work that they've done with leadership in environment, in ecology, protecting the primary Amazon rainforest, protecting the Georgia coastline. He will speak with them about how having a deep connection with nature informed and empowered them to make these incredible pioneering changes. John Milton, let me first introduce him first. John Milton is the founder and CEO of Way of Nature. He's a person who has had a deep connection with nature since he was quite young, having done his first vision quest at the tender age of 7. And once he did one, he never stopped. He is a person who has blended very deep traditional lineages of many great traditions of Buddhism, Tibetan Bon Buddhism, Zazen, among Hindu, many other traditions. He has blended that with this very deep and powerful connection with nature. And he is the founder and CEO of Way of Nature, which brings people back into connection with the three natures, their inner nature, outer nature, and true nature. It's his lifelong passion, it's his lifelong goal to be of service to all beings on this earth, humans and non-humans alike. And along with it is his very good friend and colleague, Göran Gennvi. Göran is the founder of Nature Academy Learning Lab, SOL Sweden, faculty at Executive Education, Stockholm School of Education, and a senior advisor at the Talberg Foundation. He's also a board member at the Stockholm Resilience Center and Escart Foundation. Did I say that right? He's an economist, pathfinder, mountain guide by training, with deep training with the Sami and Native American elders. As he says, he also has a very different angle to leadership development and also bringing leaders into deep connection with nature, much like John. So thank you very much for everyone for joining us for our first Nature Side Chat. And now, John, please, I open the floor to you.
Thank you, Cindy. Good job. One of the great things for me today about having Göran here together for a little sharing together and exploration of the past is it's not so common to find people who have both a background and deep ways of connecting to nature and who blended that with a passion for the spiritual and sacred side of nature at the same time. And I think that was one of the things that brought Göran and I together way back when. I should also mention that Göran was one of the original people that got the Way of Nature Sweden started. And so we have to give him a lot of credit for that as well. So Göran, wonderful to see you here. You're over in Sweden. I'm sitting here in Preston, Colorado.
Yeah, thank you. Great to be here.
Good to spend time together today.
Yeah, thank you.
We were chatting about climate change earlier on, and Göran was mentioning that they're having temperatures right now in the northern zone in Siberia and Scandinavia. That's, I guess, historic high temperatures.
Yeah, it's heat records every day now.
Yeah,
it's a bad sign, and of course the COVID on top of it makes it tough for people, because people want to seek shadows and also some cooling in the waters by the beaches and so on. It's overcrowded, so now they have guards in some of the swimming areas because people, you know, they're trying to find cold.
Sure.
and get too close to each other, of course, on the small spots that are available. So it's tough times, actually, and I hope it will be a wake-up call.
I hope so too.
Yeah.
One of the things that I thought would be fun to start with today is how we first began to spend some time together. And I think one of the biggest first times was in Baja California.
Yeah.
And so maybe
yeah.
be great to hear your memories of that time together.
Yeah, actually, it was fantastic. I met Peter Senge in Sweden. He was attending a small meeting. He was invited as well as myself, and we met in an old Iron Age village, you know, that has been kept, and and he said, he was so excited. He said, Göran, you have to meet John Milton. And I said, why? Well, you are so much alike when it comes to your passions and ideas and experiences and so. And of course, I had read the book Presence. It was just fresh. And when I read this chapter, Seeing with the Heart, the story from Baja, I was already on my way, I will say. But when Peter Senge mentioned it so clearly that this was a must, I think I called you, and you were so generous. So you were sending CDs, even from the advanced training. and I started to listen to them, and of course I had mentioned before that the Mantak Chia and the shamanistic training and all that. So I think you felt safe in a way when you were sending it over. And then I had the chance to come over to Baja in December 2004, I think it was. Yeah. And I was lucky because we were just two people at that time. So we had lots of time to spend together as well.
I remember that.
And I got spoiled to get the training from you. It was like a private lesson on a ski resort. and of course that lots of ideas came up, and from that time I felt at once I wanted to invite you to Europe and to Scandinavia, and so I did. And the year after we did the program together in the archipelago.
Yeah, I think the first was out. What's the name of that area we were working in?
Gillinge at Ole's place, remember?
Yes.
Yeah.
I should mention that Göran is a very skilled boatman, and demonstrated his skill in skimming through these very shallow, interconnected islands in the Stockholm archipelago. Beautiful, beautiful area. Spectacular.
Yeah. You know, I had been renting a place, like you could call it the conference center, a little bit like that on the island, for some years in the archipelago, and we did kayaking and we did nature activities there with leadership trainings and so on, and even this executive education from Stockholm Business School was the target group there. So yeah, it was fantastic. Yeah. Beautiful, and people get so excited when they met you, and they remember we had pretty wealthy people with lots of experience from the business society with us.
Yeah, I was very inspired by the fact that in Scandinavia in general, so many leaders have been able to integrate a love of nature and their work as leaders, and they kind of naturally do what we both do for as a big chunk of our lives, which is to take people back into nature, help them learn how to reconnect, and to do that, and then to receive the gifts of creativity and opening of the heart that comes from that. And,
but one person that was with us, he's a very famous businessman, founder of a big international company, and he had a summer house just beside where we were, not just beside, but not far from it. He had spent all his life in the archipelago, being in nature, but had never come in connection to nature as after this. So he was amazed. He was so touched by heart. So I mean, even though they spend time, they haven't got that deep connection.
Very true. I think one of the things that has really surprised me over the years is how many people maybe growing up as doing fishing or hunting or camping, doing some trips with friends. And of course, these are wonderful and can be very powerful ways of connecting. But when you bring in the two things, which is the power of solitude, being alone in nature without human culture to constantly reinforce who you are and what nature is. You don't have to give it a lot of names. And then you combine that with beginning to open a sacred view of nature as being part of the unfoldment of an immense mystery. And you're part of that mystery, and it's unfolding. And to be able to enter into that kind of experience with nature for a farmer or a fisherman, or for somebody involved with forestry or mining, even though they think they know the earth and the land and nature well, the process that we've been working with over the years and developing is completely opens the eyes to a brand new experience. And of course, when you take people from the city who've had not much experience with deeper connections with outer nature, what opens through the kind of processes we've been developing is really profound and life-changing.
Yeah, and it's also what we have seen, as you saw when you have been visiting a couple of times the archipelago. There's lots of quote summer houses out there. It's one of the most beautiful areas you can find on the planet in a way, if you like that kind of nature, of course. But because we have also many weeks of vacation by law in Sweden, even the executives take 4, 5, 6 weeks. Perhaps they have their family out for all summer and they spend a lot of time in nature, actually. So that's sometimes I call it, we got nature in our mother's milk in Scandinavia, especially in Sweden, where we have this access to nature even on private land in a way where most countries doesn't do. They don't give that freedom, but we have it. So, but it's the missing link is actually the guiding into that field that you was just mentioning, I think.
Yeah, I think that that was another thing that I think brought us together in work, because of when you did your passage in Baja, I think you saw that we had a very strong common ground there in developing ways of helping people reconnect, because for most people these days, they've lost or forgotten that connection with nature, which I think most people instinctively know there's something really powerful and profound there. But if you've lived most of your life in a city and you've not had much chance to get into the wild, your connection is maybe to a city park or a favorite tree or a bed of flowers, which is great. But the experience of immersing yourself in a completely natural and wild environment is quite something else again. And so we've both been working on ways to help people have a taste of that if they've been separated from that for a while. And we kind of pioneered some of that work together in things like that program in the archipelago.
Yeah. What I saw when I met you, that you had a structure that I've been longing for or looking for. my background as a mountain guide, when I was a teenager, late teenager, I was working on this pretty fancy, you could call it a mountain lodge, where we had lots of decision makers as our guests. And the wake up for me, or when the vision came, what I wanted to do with my life was actually when, you know, you're walking in for hours, 5-6 hours, actually to bring the people to the best spots, to meet a flower, to meet a beautiful view, to open the senses and perceptions, and you know, to relax in nature. That was my job. But when we were laying on our backs, and this very famous CEO laying on his back and looking at the clouds just beside me, and he said, "This is the way I would like to feel when I make decisions." And then I started to ask, "What do you mean? What's happening?" And he said, "I get connected to a deeper source, the part of me that are most authentic, the part of me that I like most, but I'm so seldom connected with in my busy life."
Yeah.
So that what took me, you know, looking for ways to do this. And actually the vision was, what if I once in my life could bring decision makers into that spot, that inner place, from where the best decisions for all life can be taken.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. We began doing some of these joint programs together in Sweden, and building on that passion, mutual passion.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you said, "John, there's a group that I'm starting to do some work with, and I think it'd be great if we could work together with this group up in central Sweden." They're doing programs in a place where an ancient meteor, many millions of years ago, I guess, came crashing into the earth, blasted a gigantic crater into the earth, and then the water came in and filled that crater in that blasted area with a beautiful lake, Siljan.
Lake Siljan, that's right. Yeah.
Siljan. And I think both Göran and I feel that the impact of that crater left a very powerful kind of energetic imprint behind, which we can all feel when we go there.
Yeah.
And I thought it was quite auspicious that the Talbrook Forum began to locate themselves there for their gatherings.
Yeah.
And this group, you can probably elaborate much better than I, Göran, because you've worked as a part of the core group of Talbrook. But the thing that impressed me was that here's a group of people that had a passion for coming up with an ecological and environmental sustainability focus for the earth and for the protection of the planet. That was the complement to the big economic gatherings at Davos. And but here was a gathering of those that were not just concerned about the economies of humans, but how humans could live as good partners with the rest of life on planet Earth in a sustainable way.
Yeah.
And so for us to be invited into working with them to provide a way to take this this process of nature activity that we've been working on to the Talbrook Forum and provide it in a very short period of time. This is a big deal in terms of having a gathering of sometimes between 1,000 and 2,000 people.
Yeah.
So we had to be very precise in how this training occurred. Göran came up with a wonderful term, Pathfinder, which was the name for the those that were trained to take smaller groups. If you've got several thousand people, obviously you have to break that down into smaller units. And then those smaller units are led by a Pathfinder. And so the Pathfinder needs to be trained in how to take people out and how they can then become a connector of inner, outer, and true nature aspects. And so this is the amazing thing that happened at Talbrook. Not only was it a kind of a Davos for the environment and for the planet, but it was also willing to take that dive into what was really a pretty unique idea of taking people out in the woods and leaving them there alone for a short period of time, and instead of a week, maybe half a day, or in some cases a full day and a night, with the help of a well-trained guide or pathfinder.
Yeah.
That was pretty radical stuff.
Definitely. Yeah, it was a fantastic innovation, I will call it. Founded by the former strategist of Volvo Cars, and Ekman, and he felt that the people that was trying, I mean, Volvo is a big deal for Sweden, but they were only speaking with or talking to people in the area of automobiles or oil, or that kind of infrastructure. So he wanted to create a meeting outside Volvo, but where you bring people from all angles of society and discuss how on earth can we live together. That was the main theme of this year. Right. Yeah, and and then he was using art, music, and nature as the colors, so to speak, and we were not. It was not allowed to have long talks from to the audience. It was about dialoguing, and the thing was that when I was asked actually to do this, I did the thing with a smaller group when it was a similar situation. This was 2005 or something, mm-hmm. and it was fires in California, and it was fires in the Amazon, and we had to discuss in this group what can we do, what's going on, and I took them out and let the people sit and reflect in connection with nature, small. By one actually, and when they came back, there was a completely other dialogue that came out of that. So Bo said in the morning after, actually at breakfast, he said, "Göran, I want to sit alone with you and have a chat." And I thought, wow, now I'm finished. This was too much. And then he was kind of like this and said, "What we did yesterday?" Yes. I said, "I want you to open up, that we open up the whole forum next year with this." And that was at that time 600 people. I said, "Impossible. How is that? How should that? We do it, no problem." Okay. So that was actually something, you figure it out, he said. And then we were kind of trying to find ways, and I was talking to Jan, what is the most important part actually to open up? Well, if we only have a couple of hours in the beginning of the meeting, what practice or tools can we give the audience? And what we felt was actually and agreed upon is very much the perception fields. Yeah. So the parts of the training that you give, and also kind of the part of the development chain for a person when you really are going to open up for nature and for actually the three natures. That's the whole thing. And it was a big success. Everybody was a bit nervous, of course, because this is not the regular way of opening a big international meeting with with presidents and kings and guards. And
exactly. Most people were used to getting some very skillful blah blah blah, but here they're getting pure experience of connection, without a lot of blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And I think this is a bit of a jolt for people.
Yeah.
Space and silence, stillness.
It was fantastic. And the thing was, I think it was after the first or second year, then when Bo Ekman was over in US, and he was invited, one of the professors in Yale University. That professor was bringing together some of his colleagues, and they were sitting and should talk about his experience from what they thought, what happened at the Tällby Forum, and what was discussed. And he started and said, it was one of my strongest experience ever. Yeah. And what? They said. Well, you know, I recognized I'm 63 years old. I have never been alone in nature before. This was the first time. And then he started to describe his deep experience of connection with himself and nature. And it was not the topics they were discussing he was referring to. It was actually his own experience. And that was recorded from your friend that had this radio show, remember?
Oh, yes, right.
Yeah.
Cheryl.
So she did the interview with Bo, and he was referring to that.
Some very fine interviews with Bo.
Yeah.
And with Peter.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
So, but what I could say, what we also did was we did Night in Nature, where we let people stay just under the stars by themselves.
At that beautiful little island that to take a boat over and into this volcanic lake, and then camp there with a little bonfire.
But also on that hill where we had the wolf pack, you know, remember the first one of the two years we did that up there on the hills. Yeah. So there was, and that was the same thing when
Remind me of the wolf pack.
That was actually a area where the wolves was they had their area there. So but we didn't meet them, and we were listening for the holes, but we didn't hear them. But
so they had their dens there, and they would often hunt and howl there.
Yeah.
Quite a first place if you've been a city kid, and then you come out and you do your first nature quest around a wolf pack. Yeah. Be quite a shift of gears. Amazing.
Yeah. So but the thing with the Pathfinder training was also, there was a couple of things. First of all, what we did was we had strong discipline. We made it I will not say easy to handle, but we tried to make it so easy as possible so every person that was a Pathfinder or could be a Pathfinder, they could find their own personal way of giving the guidance.
Yes, some unique gifts.
Yeah, could be exactly. But we were following pretty much the way the fields of perception structure that you have created, actually.
Yeah.
And then they had to practice at home. We did like three whole days, and then they should practice with groups at home. And then, because we wanted them to feel very safe when they met people, staying in front of people that were a little bit uneasy, perhaps, with this, because they were not there. And I think that was part of the success, because we had this kind of well-trained Pathfinders as well.
Yeah, they didn't just have the training itself about the principles and the core practices, but also working with some groups, small groups, to get a feeling for what that means and the kinds of questions that come up. And for the most part, most of the solitary time was relatively short, 3 to 5 hours, as I recall.
Yeah.
And the preparatory time in the training component was again usually around a 2 to 3 hour chunk of time, and then there was some time to come back together again after the alone experience and do a bit of sharing.
Yeah.
By the way, that we've come to call that the way of nature. You.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's the preparatory period,
Yeah.
the deep drop into connection with inner, outer, and true nature. And then there's coming back and integrating that experience with the support of others in the spiritual community, and beginning to learn how to bring that into the outer world, and also begin to stabilize the creativity that has come up as a result of the process.
Yeah.
As we both know, you're in the creativity that's tapped into as you begin to approach source or true nature, especially. You don't have to be established in your true nature, but even the journey close to arriving at true nature begins to bring up a huge upwelling of immense creativity, which, of course, to leaders and heads of different organizations, that's pure gold.
Yeah.
And it can be refined into it from 18 karat to 24 if you really have the right practices and processes to refine with. And that's, of course, a lot of what people who might go through in a short initial program like this, then hopefully they will come back and take a journey with some of our programs that take people deeper.
Yeah.
So that gold goes from 18 karat to 24 and becomes very pure gold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely so. I have also seen that innovation is the new big thing. Everybody's talking about innovate and transform and regenerativity and
We go through these words from environment to sustainability to renewal to regeneration. Regeneration of its own cycle of words.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, of course, that there is a language trying to capture what nature is all about. And finally, I think even in business language or leadership language, we're coming closer and closer and closer. What has happened, at least in Scandinavia and perhaps Northern Europe now, is that there is raising understanding and awareness about, some call it a mind shift, some call it growth that matters, some call it, and this is the really tough ones, it's called beyond sustainability, beyond sense making. And when you go into that field, it's also beyond words. Yeah.
And of course, that's essentially the same as what we've been referring to as true nature.
Yeah. And when you hear, as just a month ago, or a little bit more than a month ago, we had a big Zoom call with Stockholm School of a business school was actually inviting with the KE, which is the one of the leading academias here in Sweden, and we had people like Peter Senge and Otto Scharmer and others also from Harvard that were discussing how can we mature as society, how can we mature as adults, and I will say that academia are coming closer and closer now towards what we are talking about, the old wisdom traditions. So I think also there is a raising awareness about, if we are going to make it as a collective, we have to come up to another level as a collective. And then how do we do that? And you and I know, I will say that we know, that we have to reconnect to nature again.
Yeah, it's interesting, in a way, the COVID crisis and the racial discrimination upwelling going on right now, I think are both reminders that we have an invitation from the circumstances that the planet has provided us right now to take a much deeper dive into a much more fundamental kind of truth that most indigenous peoples have already had.
Yeah.
Most indigenous peoples do a nature quest or a sacred passage or a way of nature, nature element type of process. And that process bonds them very deeply to the rest of life and having the experience of being part of the family or the community of life as a system. And then, of course, when you have that relationship, you have the love and the appreciation and the respect and the honoring, and most of all, the motivation to begin behaving as a responsible member of a big family of life.
Yeah.
All indigenous cultures have that, and the root of that behavior is the experience, not just the knowledge, but the experience of deep, deep nature connectivity to the outer nature, the inner nature, and the true nature that underlies both.
Yeah.
So we have a lot we can learn. I think one of the things that I've done over the years is to try to live and study with many indigenous cultures around the world, and then learn from them. And then from that process of deep immersion, begin to see what is the common ground of their process to help bond people more deeply with those three natures, outer, inner, and true.
Yeah.
Then what is the common ground? And then most of the training that we utilized in Tovarek, for example, came from just the observation of what was the common ground of these many cultures that had some sort of deep connection to wild nature. And when you have that common ground, you're likely to have principles that can be integrated or accepted by virtually any people, any culture, any individual, because it's a common ground level.
Yeah.
And the other benefit is that instead of fighting about who's got the best way, best process, you begin to see that each culture has a way that has a common ground with your way. And instead of fighting about who's got the best way, you can celebrate these beautiful multiple pathways into truth.
Yeah.
And so it helps to eliminate the need to fight among cultures about who's got the best pathway, especially spiritually.
Definitely.
So I think this little background to, again, a little deeper level of what we've been up to. Then, of course, the main thing there too is that when you make that dive into creativity, into the pure creativity of source or true nature, what comes up is a kind of creativity if you engage in the type of processes we've been helping develop. The type of creativity that comes up is deeply nature connected, which means it's a creativity that helps come up with a creativity that provides answers to many of the imbalance challenges that we have between humans and the rest of the earth. And the creativity is very precisely aimed at the kind of creativity that will help resolve many of these issues of imbalance, disharmony, and lack of understanding how to come into a kind of symbiotic relationship with our ecosystem and our biosphere. So
yeah, definitely. I've seen a couple of things that I just want to mention. We have had a couple, actually many years of programs up in the Sami country. And the Samis, I will say, as you know, they're very close friends up there. And I can see they have it imprinted in their DNA, and they're still working with it, from it, following it, which is actually, they are part of the landscape. The gratitude, they giving thanks, they're asking permissions, even if when they are making coffee and making a fire, and they're giving the first sip to the spirits there, because of I will say, not only tradition, it's about surviving on a very rough place on earth where you need to play by the possibilities. So it's evolution that have made them or brought them to where they are, and they are still doing it because it feels right. And so I think that's one thing, which is it's also a very, very good thing to bring people to that kind of places. And you remember when
we, of course, have worked many times with Rader and his wife Kirsten, who are Samis living not far from North Holland, and bringing them to have a chance to share with our Sami friends and get a taste of what it is to immerse in the indigenous wisdom, which is so ecologically coherent, which we really are struggling to find a way to recover in modern, what I like to call techno-urbano-industrial culture.
Yeah.
And but people like the Sami have taken that dive into deep connectivity with the rest of life, and so the lessons that they hold, especially for the peoples that are living in the northern Scandinavian environments, where they've specialized in a very precise deep wisdom of that kind of ecosystem.
Yeah.
Extremely important for modern cultures to pay attention to and learn from, especially those living in Scandinavian areas.
But what I remember that you have mentioned many, many times, you have been kind of, you're saying that bioregions is the thing. And of course, if we see ourselves as a big family wandering out from Africa many hundreds of thousands of years ago or earlier than that, and then we in this sweet spot of 10,000 years when it was possible to walk towards the Greenland or all the ways that man has traveled and find a way to survive with that bioregion and created a culture adapted to that possibilities. That is also lots of lessons to learn from how you can adapt.
True.
But as you say, with the common understanding of on a spiritual level, and we have forgotten it. We have been pretty. I mean, we have been seeking truth on other places than where we are living, and I think that's also why it's much more interests shown. I can see from even academia now, what the indigenous culture has to offer. And I have also seen a much more openness amongst, for example, leaders when we talk about spirituality.
If you look at the diversity of the planet, and if you were trying to, I don't remember ever seeing a report that tries to account for the tremendous biodiversity of human indigenous cultures around the planet. But if you were to do something like that, what you would find is virtually every indigenous culture created a culture that is harmonious with the ecosystem that it is part of. And of course, the vision questing, nature questing type of process that each of these cultures engages in is the key to the connectivity out of which the creative response comes to learn how to live in harmony with that ecosystem. And most indigenous cultures look on themselves as growing up out of nature, as a part of nature's body, not descending into the planet from some realm out there, but growing up literally from the earth, very grounded, very, very, very based in the whole system of life of which they are a part. And then, of course, when you have that type of connection, you naturally want to live in a symbiotic way. Symbiosis means collaborative. Most of us with an ecological studies background, like myself, over the years, I've come to realize that 90% of the behavior of the species within an ecosystem is based on mechanisms for collaboration, cooperation, and symbiotic behavior that forms the overall health of the living system, the living ecosystem. And there is that 10% of competitive refinement that takes place, but it's in the context of that overall symbiotic behavior. So even the competition is part of the symbiosis, if you look at it a little more deeply. Mm-hmm. Some of the studies in Yellowstone on wolf predation and how that helps to maintain the health of the forests and the environment, for example, is a good example of that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So really the challenge now is to, within each of the ecosystems of the planet, not only to understand them from a scientific standpoint of the energy flows in the way in which the life forms there remain in balance, but also to begin to honor and appreciate and tap into this unique wisdoms of the ecological indigenous cultures that had the ecological wisdom that we're very much in danger of losing as these cultures are impacted by all the pressures of the modern world, including things like the COVID virus.
Yeah.
And so in a way, that's part of the challenge, is to save this indigenous wisdom of the local and huge display of ecosystems around the planet, so that we learn this unique, specific lessons of each ecosystem that are the lessons that have been learned over thousands of years by the indigenous cultures of these places. And we barely pay attention to it in terms of modern contemporary culture, or we popularize it in some ridiculous way like a cartoon. And this is not the way to go. So the only answer is that, combined with, I believe, having a process of designing a way to get people out through the kind of thing that we've been working on over the years, where everyone, every young woman, every young man has the opportunity, especially in their teenage years, to go through a rite of passage in their local ecosystem, to begin to have that experience of bonding through sight and sound and taste and smell and touch and movement and balance and the experience of their energy body, and through the life of their emotions and mind, all of which bond them deeply, or can bond them deeply, with nature. They just have the opportunity to go out in solitude with some guidance like the Pathfinders have provided at Tomberg. This could be done. It would not be, it would be a relatively straightforward thing to put together a program like this that would serve the planetary reconnectivity to all of the diverse ecosystems of the planet. And out of that process, I think both you and I know a huge amount of wisdom and creativity would come of how to redirect our culture back into balance and harmony and a much more integrated state. One last thing, I was listening to Greta Thunberg's, one of her last sharings. You sent along a little video of one of her last sharings that she gave. And I've been a big fan of what she's been doing to try to wake us up. And of course, her main message has been, don't think so much about me. Pay attention to the science.
Yeah.
Pay attention to the science of climate change and damage.
Yeah.
That's all I ask. And here's the best science that we've got through these studies that have come out of the UN. Let's pay attention to these and begin to shift our policies in that direction.
Yeah.
And I think she's absolutely right on with that. And I would say the companion to that initiative could be a campaign to help support leaders and young people especially, but all people ideally, to make a deeper reconnection with nature through these simple processes of the things like the Nature Quest, the Sacred Passage, these processes in Nature Academy and Wave Nature have assembled over the years, which very simply allow people to reconnect. And from that reconnection, they have the motivation to do what Greta's talking about, to want to go back to the science, to want to go back to living a life of true balance, integration and harmony, and deep respect for our fellow members of life from the other species and the other populations that make up the planet. So this aspect of the indigenous cultures like the Sami is very important and gives us some guidelines for, you might say, an invitation that's almost there on the table for us now to pick up, to take what we've learned. And the Tomberg Forum, one of the things that really excited me about the forum and the work with them that we've been talking about here is that I think the largest group that I'm aware of that was introduced to this the connection process was close to a couple thousand people.
Yeah, that's true.
Now think about that, a couple thousand people at one time, with the help of the Pathfinders and these guys that are trained in the process, go out and then support the transformation of a couple thousand people, who then come back and say, this was one of the most powerful, most profound experiences of this entire gathering on sustainability. This was the one thing that really made a difference and that I would remember, and that helped to transform my life. Now imagine that happening on a much larger planetary basis.
Yeah.
it proved the point that this can be done. It's not that complicated. We know how to do this.
Yeah.
You bring together authentic teachings, bring together the power of a special place, a wild place in nature. You bring together the capacity to be in solitude, where you're disconnected from normal human reminders of just being a regular member of a culture, but instead you're suddenly just a naked, open being with nature as your partner. And you begin to see about a different relationship. And then you come back in a spiritual community to share what you've been through and bring out some of the creativity that's come up from touching very deeply into your true nature aspect as well.
Mm.
So now all of these things can be done tomorrow. And they certainly can be done over the period of a year or two if we took the time to train people to serve as guides to go out and do this kind of thing and to support much broader transformation of, again, pardon my coining this word, modern urbano techno-industrial hominids. But I mean, that's the truth of it. We're mostly urbanized from an industrial cultural background with a highly technological focus in our lives these days. I mean, we're using it right now.
Yeah.
And so that's the reality. How do we move from that kind of human into humans that are deeply and profoundly connected like the indigenous peoples are and have been? Yeah. It can be done. And you and I happen to have some of the keys to the kingdom of how that's done.
Yeah.
So that's the invitation on the table to the culture.
I think this is great. I think this is the message today, I hope, because what you have started, thanks to, I must say, to Corona, COVID, is actually to start to develop these podcasts that you have done.
Yep.
And the training, the online training, and this series that starts now. Yep. And I think this is of course the first step, and then if we can find ways and develop ways to bring people also out in the direct connection, that let's do that. Let's find ways to do that.
I think that's the next step, because everything else has been done. We've laid the foundation for how to do it, how to do it with large numbers of people, how to train the guides and the pathfinders to facilitate the process. And now we even have a lot of the teachings in the process of being recorded. Yeah. So it doesn't require you or me to be there in person necessarily. Mm-hmm. So maybe a little funding might help to get the
as always, that's the key. No, but I think also proof of concept is also something you're asking for when you should put money onto the table for a test or for. But now we have tested it.
We have that. Proof of concept has been proved,
and we know it works, and we have good allies with us. What I would like to see is also your own experience when it comes to the what do you call it? The is that A, or when they got it, because you have met many CEOs or top leaders, different top leaders. What's happening? What is it? The spark.
You know, it's interesting in many of the traditions of Asia. One of the ones that I've studied in fairly deeply is one called Dzogchen. It comes out of, it's largely been identified with the Tibetan Bunpo, which is the indigenous culture of Tibet, and the Nyingma, which is the ancient ones or the old Buddhist tradition of Tibet, and very much associated with the Guru Rinpoche Padmasambhava. But in those traditions, there's one symbol, which is when you write it in Western linguistic way, is AH. That represents for us, we look on as right? Or or So it represents an opening of space,
Ah,
an opening of a kind of spacious and luminous and vast and silent and deeply quiet and tranquil state.
mm,
And in that sense, it refers to the fundamental level of our true nature, which is one of deep stillness of everything physical, deep silence of everything mental, and deep openness of the true nature of our innermost being. And of course, in that vastness, which is essentially indestructible because it's the foundation of all life itself, all living things have that at their foundation, including us. But when that's touched into, of course, that's the well of creativity, the well out of which all this creative response comes from. And so the little word ah, or the verbal symbol, ah,
mm,
presents that opening into one's true nature,
mm.
the potential of each one of us.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
great stuff.
Mm.
Well, wonderful sharing, Göran.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you for leaping electronically across the oceans and continents together with me today like this. Great fun.
I'm blessed. I'm honored. That's fantastic. Fantastic to see you. You look so. It's lots of energy, lots of spirit. It's lots of the peaceful warrior.
It's all the haircut. You saw me a couple of days ago with the hair out like this. I've been sequestered for 4 months.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I'd like to thank both of you for being here today for our first nature side chat with Way of Nature. It was a really beautiful sharing and a lot of very incredibly pertinent topics touched on for our environment, for our life here on this planet, in this universe. So thank you so much for your sharings today.
Thank you, Sandy. And I should probably mention that they can reach our Way of Nature group here in this at wayofnature.com. And then Göran, you can reach Göran through the Nature Academy and also as well as Way of Nature Sweden, which both have websites.
Yep.
Thank you. Yes, as John said, if you'd like to know more about Way of Nature, please check out our website, wayofnature.com. And Göran, what is your website?
Natureacademy.se.
Okay, thank you so much. And both of you have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Göran. Come back and visit soon.
Yeah, we're longing. And
whenever things lighten up a little bit.